Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Hammer, the last couple of days, for those of you covering the Canadian Football League, I know you've been more on the hockey beat lately, but sure that changed quite a bit a couple of days ago when we heard Dave Naylor's report on CFL XFL. What did you think when you first heard the report? And is that something that surprised you, or have you been hearing sort of rumblings that something like this might be around the corner, considering the precarious financial situation this league is in?
Yeah, so when I first read the message, I thought it was significant because I saw Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson on there, and I just, I thought it was an interesting thing. I thought it was significant for one particular reason beyond the fact that The Rock was in the press. And I added to the media contact, and I told him he never called me back. But the thing that stuck out to me was a pivot from Randy Ambrosie's original direction that he's been preaching for years. And I said this on Twitter the other day. I clarified my tweet and said that I actually think this is a good thing. But the fact is that Randy Ambrosie and the whole Global 2.0 thing has been built on Canada being the kind of country you want to get behind. And yes, Randy would say this. He wouldn't dump on the U.S. He doesn't dump on the NFL. But he was talking about Canada compared to what's going on in the United States. And he saw Canada as the country that other countries would want to get around and join in this football family. So to see the XFL, kind of I know it, and let's be clear about something. It's under different leadership. This isn't Vince McMahon's XFL. And
no, not even close. And a lot of people will say that. They remember He Hate Me and, everything that happened in year number one.
And that's an important thing, that with the new ownership and under this ownership, it will look, it's by name the same, but it is nothing like it will be with Vince McMahon's.
Let me just say this about the XFL last year, because I'm a football nut. We finished the Super Bowl, and then all of a sudden the XFL 2.0 was starting. And I watch games every week. Love to bet on them as well. They did an amazing job of promoting that part in the game. Seattle, St. Louis, DC were developing pretty good grassroots fan bases. It kind of reminded me of the MLS starting out, to be honest with you, with people really putting their arms around it and getting into it. Now, that wasn't the case in all of the in all of the league, but the quality of football was good. We saw a number of players make the move from the XFL to the NFL, which sort of was the idea. And for all the people that say, well, the XFL has failed twice, listen, it failed the first time. It came back, a decade and a bit later, and it, like so many other things, took a bullet because of COVID-19. And their timing was the absolute worst, Jeff, because they were starting right after the Super Bowl. They're essentially in week 5 or week 6 of a season when everything came crashing down. And at that point, I think the writing was on the wall for what was going to happen with any industry with large gatherings. And that's why it happened. And then you have The Rock in that, is a marketing machine, a brilliant businessman, seeing the potential of it. I think it speaks a lot to the potential of the XFL that group went and took advantage of the opportunity to buy it. And so I just think it's an important designation, because it's easy to hear some of the noise around it saying, oh, this is a joke of a league that's failed twice. That really isn't the case. And if you ignore the global pandemic, you're not really being fair to the actual situation.
Totally. And and I think that's important to know, right? It's important to know that it's different. And you're right. The XFL did see some success early on. They were dealt a horrendous hand, like every other sports league, but just given their timing and rebooting, to me, that bankruptcy thing and selling it, it was heading, I think it was hours away from being auctioned off before they actually put $50 million on that. I see that more as wow, did we put a lot of work and we're going to have to start from square one again? In this atmosphere, it was an opportunity to get out. Now, the reason why I think it's even more significant is, when I said about that whole, Randy Ambrosie doing it, now that he's grouping on with them, look, this is, I'll let the people in on a little secret here, or at least a media thing, that if TSN is getting horny about this, it's for real. These guys are in the boardrooms talking to the XFL. There would be high people up. And when you see that much coverage and that much speculation by TSN on this topic, it's for real. And the reality is, and I'll just kind of pick off some of your points, Huss, is that this group, I mean, The Rock's, The Rock is a, a globally known guy. He's, he's everything you want. He's a total package in what you want as far as like a visible person to represent you, an ambassador. I don't know if you could look for a better one, but it's Danny Garcia, which you might as well call, her, she was married to The Rock. I'd refer to The Rock as her husband in this category.
Hey, just quickly on that. No one really talks about that, but you want to talk about just an incredible situation. And I don't know what happened with them being married and then being divorced. Mm-hmm. But when you talk about a group of people working together hand in hand that were married, that have moved on and done other things, that are business partners, that sounds like some people that are pretty good at working with each other and working things out. So it was and obviously it's not something you want to talk about all the time, but the unique makeup of that group with Danny Garcia being such a huge part of it, I think is noteworthy, not to mention having a woman in a very, very powerful position considering her background with it. It's sort of a fascinating setup on the XFL side of things.
100%. So I went digging down this, that day, and Danny Garcia, yeah, they were married, they have a kid together, they had amicable divorce, and she then after that, I believe, managed his movies and managed his, she was the brains behind his success. So obviously that relationship is very, very strong. There's a mutual respect there. The other interesting part of this, Huss, is Redbird Capital. So anyone who's been Googling that group, that is a massive, massive company. They have about $4 billion in assets and a strong recent interest in sports. So what they want, it'll be interesting what they're up to, because if you look at what's going on in the Canadian Football League, and if this get to a point where it's a merger, and I think it does get to that point, to be clear, it's going to be a very interesting situation with Red Capital. Are they interested in buying some of the franchises that are not that great in the CFL, or owners that don't want to do it anymore? I mean, could you see Toronto, BC, maybe even Montreal's owners go, whoa, you know what I mean? Like, talk about buying a team at the wrong time. What if the XFL owns 3 teams? What if they are literally acquiring sports teams right now? So if you look at what they're doing right now, and here's the other thing. This announcement was to literally, I think it got to a point where it was getting super, super serious, and there were some things being talked about that became a pressing issue that if we don't publicly discuss, and I mean, talk about talking, we're going to be kind of burying ourselves when we eventually tell Canadians of all the changes. So I think if you kind of read between the lines on all these different things, I think what we're headed to is certainly what a lot of people are fearing, and that, there will be a merger. I'm not, it's very interesting on what it will look like. I think there's lots of things you have to talk about, what a merger looks like. Could it be a Canadian division and an American division with some crossover games? I think you'd want to do that because I think you'd want to take advantage of a couple of different things. You don't want to get rid of the Grey Cup. So if you can create like a Canadian championship as the Grey Cup, you can do the whole week, you can do the money makers, you can do all that stuff, and you can kind of keep the Canadian tradition there. Because at the end of the day, people are, I know there's going to be people who are going to want to leave the game if it goes to 4 downs, if it goes to, if it changes all the things or all the traditions that we know that the CFL is, that's fine. The alternative, unfortunately, is probably no CFL. Because
exactly. I mean, listen, this option to go down this road only happens, in my opinion, if the CFL is in such a desperate financial situation that the survival of professional football in Canada depends on it. I don't think that there's any other way we can look at it. That there'll be some feedback, and listen, there's the incredible history of the Canadian Football League. If things were healthy and you could add that 10th team and everything was going fine, then why would they even need to consider this? They wouldn't. But it's pretty clear right now. And I think just to go back to what you'd mentioned, the Toronto Argonauts, the British Columbia Lions, the Montreal Alouettes. I mean, I'm hearing that those teams and the financial situation that they're in right now are, resisting even playing a season this year. So
Well, why do you think, it's not to interrupt you, Has, but why do you think the one guy who's getting all the credit in the world right now is a guy who has no financial risk in his company? Why is that? Why is it the guy who's willing to work crazy to bring the league back, not the guy who has to dip into his own pockets and support the league? That's all you need to know.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. And what that is kind of ominous for where we are right now.
Well, and to go even further on it, Huss, I mean, look at the reality of the situation. They lost $20 million in 2019. We didn't even know what COVID-19 was at that time. So now you have then you have teams. You have the Saskatchewan Roughriders coming out. You have the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. You have anybody that will tell anyone who's listening how much money they're going to lose this year. And all those numbers are massive. And of course, they're paying. A lot of that is payroll. So they're talking about how that slush fund of $9 million that the Bombers have is gone. So this year, if they play this year, whether it's an 18-game season, whether it's a 6-game season, and it's probably more towards the 18-game season, they are going to lose money this year. They can't fill the stadium in a regular situation, and they need to fill the stadium. This has been an issue for years. So the reason they need to play is to stay relevant. And the reason now I think to stay relevant is because 2022 is bringing some massive change. They can't go away. And so the reality is they're going to lose money. Every team is going to lose money. If you can't put fans in the stands, which is a majority of teams' revenue, you don't make money. I mean, think about it. When this all came down, the CFL office was begging for like $30 million instantly so they could literally operate. So where are they? They aren't making revenue now, so they can't be in a good situation. They're going to be in a heck of a situation even now selling tickets. Right? I mean, how do you sell tickets to companies and to people who don't even know if the CFL is going to be played this year? How do you sell sponsorships to something you don't even know what it's going to look like? I mean, you were in that game.
Listen, I think there's from people inside that organization, right? I'll just focus on the Bombers. We know how important the Bombers are to this community, and we know the people that have supported it in the past. And, to be honest, I think these conversations right now are, you guys, I know you guys want to support us, and we are in a real pickle here, and we need your support. And it's certainly, this has kind of been a common theme in the Canadian Football League. This kind of comes up over and over. The Bombers are probably in the best situation of anybody in the league. They still have a lot of goodwill garnered from finally winning the Grey Cup in 2019, have not really been able to cash in on that as far as I know they did a ton of merch, but they haven't been able to do that at the stadium. And whenever the Bombers are back on the field, I mean, I think there will be a big celebration. Not only it'll be really significant to people just to be out of COVID, but as far as if I'm the sales guy going in and saying, hey, Jeff and your business, I mean, let's get you on the rink boards, let's get you 10 club seats, or let's get you a suite and let's do a deal this year, I still have a pretty hard time telling you, oh, yeah, we're playing for sure. The home opener's on the 15th of June or whatever it is. I mean, there is just still so much uncertainty. And then you add in all of this with the uncertainty of the future of the league, and it makes that job that much harder.
100%. And the other thing, too, it needs to be understood is that, I understand that people go how important the Canadian Football League is to this country. It absolutely has a long, rich history. I personally love the Canadian Football League. It's been a passion of mine since I started covering it, and it was because I got to peek behind the curtains on what the kind of league is, right? It's unlike other professional leagues, right? But the reality is that they're not going to get government help. This whole, I think they're getting supported in that they're getting those same, subsidies that other companies are getting, including my own. Not my company, but the Winnipeg Free Press is taking advantage of the wage subsidies, right? So that's helped, but they're not going to get a loan in which they probably aren't going to be able to pay, which I know they aren't going to be able to pay, and they're not going to get a handout because the Canadian government has so many areas to help out right now that funding a professional sports league that for a majority of the teams are backed by deep pockets who've already gotten massive kind of help in this situation is not going to be an option. So this is where you find yourself, where if you don't have added revenue streams, if your current revenue streams that you're used to are either drying up or in very, very big danger, what are your options?
Yeah. Now, Hammer, back to you mentioned the Grey Cup, and we'll get away from the business side of things. And let's just, for the sake of this conversation, entertain the possibility of 2022, whatever the league is going to be called, a merger between the CFL and the XFL with teams in Canada and teams in the United States. I think part of the tradition and the history of the CFL that is attractive to the XFL that would make sense would be to have the Grey Cup as the championship trophy. And on top of that, not only that, schedule the first, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6 Grey Cups in Canada, in CFL markets, with a history of putting on Grey Cup week as it is right now. Because truly, I mean, you've been there, we've been, I mean, many of our listeners and viewers have been there. There's nothing, the thing that's truly makes the CFL special, one of them is, I mean, we can talk about the rules and the size of the field, but it's also the way it is really for the people. You go to Grey Cup, you know, you've got Ryderville and the Spirit of Edmonton and Touchdown Manitoba and all those things. I mean, that is, I mean, if I'm on the XFL side of things, I'm seeing that. I mean, that is what I want my league to have. And, you know, you won't have those long-term fans in the XFL of these organizations right now because it's really just in its infancy. They started off and got their, you know, legs chopped out from underneath them. But I think that if this league happens and you're going ahead with it and the championship is still basically Grey Cup week, and we take everything that has been part of the CFL and put that on and invite the American fans to get involved, I think you have the potential of starting sort of a new era of Grey Cup week, if you will. And after you do it a while and get it established with the Canadians leading the way, it's not out of the question to think that the Grey Cup at one point might be competed for on U.S. soil.
Huss, I could not disagree with you more.
Okay.
I you know, I love you. I think it's a good, I see where you're coming from, because like the Grey Cup is a long tradition for Canadians. If this is going to be a relationship, it's not going to be like, okay, bring our tradition of Grey Cup into the Americans won't care. They won't see the history behind the Grey Up. They won't view it as this.
They'll see the parties.
I understand that, but I also think I understand
that's attractive to fans.
For sure, but are you gonna? You know, I understand that. I'm not saying it's like
you're just gonna not do it,
but I think it's a truly Canadian thing, and I think just the idea, Huss, of having the Grey Cup game played on American soil is enough to lose those fans, and that's why I said earlier is that you can kind of separate it like a Canadian division and a American division where you kind of compete like the AL and NL where you compete for your championship, and that's Grey Cup week. Because
so the Canadian championship would be like one way or the other. It has to
happen. Is the Grey Cup, right? Like here's the thing. Think of it from the XFL's perspective, because let's get something very clear here. The reality is the CFL isn't cool. That's their biggest problem. They're not cool. They try to be cool. They're trying their hardest to be cool, and they fail year in and year out. They have a good, entertaining game. They're not cool. It's just not a cool brand. Nobody wears hats that say CFL. Nobody. It's just, I mean, the diehard fans, new fans don't do it. Kids don't wear it who don't even really have an attachment to the CFL. It doesn't have that. Rock is cool. That's what they're bringing. That side is bringing the coolness, the entertainment. I don't think that if they're going to have this relationship together, they're going to want to be like, oh, that's a cute kind of cool cup that you guys have been doing, and how cool it is for the week and how chaotic it is for the week, because they just won't care. And why should they? And that's and it's
I mean, listen, you don't have to call it Grey Cup week. I'm just telling you, if you have a new league that's coming in together, and I mean, you're on the other side of the street, and you see the other people that are coming to the table have this incredible history of an amazing championship week with all these great parties that are the envy of a lot of other leagues for it. Why wouldn't you do that?
Because again, I just go back to the fact I don't think Americans will care. So my point is that if you can
listen, the reason I say this, the reason why I got to be a Chiefs fan is because I went down, I spent the time at Arrowhead Stadium, I'm tailgating with 50,000 people, something that we've never even thought of doing here, and it was the most incredible experience, and you get sucked into that. Grey Cup week to me is the same sort of thing. And I mean, my God, think about those Baltimore Stallions fans that keep coming back year after year after year. I mean, they got into it. I mean, it's something that brings everybody together. I've done Super Bowl weeks. There's nothing. It's a bunch of corporate events, suits and ties. It is nothing like Grey Cup week. I mean, if you actually are going to be a league and you're not the
absolutely.
NFL and you want to appeal to fans and you want to grow it and you want to do it, to me, that's an absolute selling point and something. If I'm on the other side, I want to maintain going in if you've got CFL teams playing in this new league.
So when I just go back to one of my original points is that I think you need to maintain that kind of traditionalist go. Like the Grey Cup is a truly Canadian thing. I get your point on wanting to introduce it to American fans. It's a great week. It's a fun week. You hope they're going to latch onto it. All that is awesome. But if you're starting a new league, why are you going with a 100-year-old trophy? Why not keep that Canadian, have the Canadian championship there, do everything you do? Because what happens if they set this up? We got to realize something. The XFL isn't the NFL. So they don't come with these massive fan bases that are just going to rush to Canada for the Grey Cup.
Well, that's my point. That's kind of my point.
But I'm saying is you can't do it and then fail at it. What I'm saying is that you keep it Canadian, you keep the Canadian championship, you keep everything the same in a lot of ways. That same feel, because you're gonna confuse the Americans and you're gonna alienate the Canadians. It's like keep it here on Canadian soil and then have a new championship that you can take the same philosophy of the Grey Cup and not treat it like a Super Bowl. Like I understand the big comparison to the Grey Cup is the one thing that doesn't matter is the game. And the thing with the Super Bowl is all that matters is the game. It's the fun leading up to the game in the Grey Cup. It's all business and corporate stuff leading up to the Super Bowl. So I understand that. So why don't you take the Grey Cup kind of mandate? Because at the end of the day, it's all about creating revenue. And the Grey Cup is a massive revenue generator. So if you can keep that in Canada and have a second one that has a separate name that you can come up with together and be new and fresh, you can bring some of those old ideas and apply them to a new.
Okay, well, I am with you on that. If you can pull it off twice in a season, I mean, that's even better. Doing it, just the concept of having everyone gather wherever for Grey Cup week and the Grey Cup, and then expect all those people to go do it again 2 weeks later or a week later somewhere else might be a little different. And the one other thing, but I think and listen, you hear it a lot, and we do too. I mean, sometimes the angriest or the loudest people are the loudest, and that sort of, takes precedence over everyone else that is sort of quietly just going along with it. I really think the blowback of what's going on, I think, is going to be overstated, because I think as much as people love the CFL, I think most of them are football fans. I think most of them are Bomber fans or Rider fans. And if the options are no league and no team, or going down this road and playing on a different size field, or maybe even, God forbid, 4 downs, I think that the blowback of all the people saying, I will never watch this again, I think a lot of the people that are saying that didn't give a damn about the CFL the last few years anyways, and are just trying to, get in front of everyone with a hot take right now that other people might get behind.
I definitely think there's a lot of those people. I get a lot of emails, right? So email to me is a bit different than blasting off on Twitter, right? So when I get emails and it outlines why they care about it, I think change is difficult for people. I mean, let's face it. A lot of the CFL's hardcore fan base are older people. They don't want change.
Yeah.
They don't. I mean, you can sit them down and have a conversation with them and give them the whole life and death argument of the actual league and what they need to do, and they'll come back with you with 3 or 4 different excuses as far as like why it needs to stay Canadiana. Even though things have been dwindling for years, right? Like the numbers have been dwindling for years. The TV numbers are still pretty good, but this is what they need. Every time Randy Ambrosie goes to a fan forum, every time they go to the Grey Cup and they talk to fans, it's this. I've been at the Bomber ones where it's tour. I've been at the Grey Cup. I ask the same questions. They're trying to find answers to, and the most common thing that comes up is, it's an older person whose daughter or son or niece or nephew or someone who's significantly younger in the 20s and 30s, they don't even care. And they're trying to find a reason for them to care. And they've been trying to find that reason for so long that, yes, are you risking alienating those fans? I think you do need to tread lightly. And I think that's why they made the announcement. Because things are getting serious, talks are getting serious, this is their way of letting the public know ahead of time. Because that impact, they're going to let people, deal with it. Like, think about it. We're literally announcing an announcement to formalize talks. Like, they're allowing people to feel those feelings, go to sleep, wake up the next day, and if they don't feel better, go to sleep the next day, wake up, and they don't feel better. And if they feel better by a millimeter every single day, by the time that they pull the trigger on this thing, they'll be converted. So I mean, the reality is that, you know, I get it. You want to do things right. You want to make sure you maintain things. Those will be part of those meetings. They need to identify what is important to those Canadians. How can we salvage as much as we possibly can from our rich history and keep as many of those fans as possible? That is going to be their challenge, and that is obviously what they're going to be focusing on.
This is awesome. You know, Mark Sports video just pops in. I don't think the under 25 crowd pays attention to the CFL. And I think overall in some of the bigger markets, that's for sure. But I mean, I sort of refer to it, and for lack of a better term, Jeff, as like rum hut culture. I was going over, and you know, it's funny because the Bombers stunk for all those years. And, you know, you go through the Doug Barry and everything in the mid 2000s, and something happened. And really, it was in that northwest corner of Winnipeg Stadium where it sort of became really fun to go to the games, even if the team wasn't doing well. And I was looking at some pictures last night. I'll throw them out on the, in the next few days of some rum hut pictures from 2011, back before we went into the new stadium. And I think back to 5 years before that when there was nothing going on. And I mean, you look right now, I mean, the Bombers have done an amazing job. The Riders have done a really good job at, you know, making it a really fun experience to go to games. And, you know, I think there are some people that aren't in it, but there has been a core of younger fans that are there. I know many of them are in this chat right now with us. And so I think there is some potential, you know, on that in some markets, but overall, you know, there's a long ways to go to get enough younger people filling the funnel to, you know, have a long and prosperous future, as opposed to the great support we've had from older fans over the years. Hammerman, this has been awesome. I could do another hour with you right now. Love to get you fired up. Love to, you know, a little.
I thought I was firing you up.
No, hey, listen, you did. I'm always fired up when you're around. Dude, it's just great to have you on the program. Great to be able to do this, man. We've had such a great first week, and this was an awesome sort of final extended conversation. Talk a little Jets, of course, talk about the future of the league. And I imagine we'll be doing this hopefully quite a bit as we get into this new journey here on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Really appreciate it, Haas. I'll double down on your comment about the WFC. They do put a lot of effort into the game day experience. Just want to say that. But honestly, guys, you're doing a great job. We'll come on anytime and fire you up, you know, whenever. So appreciate you having me on.
We'll do it again real soon. Thanks so much. There he is, the Hammer, Jeff Hamilton. Of course, you're reading his work in the Winnipeg Free Press, and you can follow him on Twitter at Jeff K. Hamilton. Man, that was such a great conversation. And to me, this is going to be a topic that, as much as we will want to and will be talking about the upcoming CFL season, hopefully with some very positive news that the Bombers will be playing, and, you know, getting Willie Jefferson and some of the guys, Coach O'Shea, on the program to talk about what's going forward. It's almost impossible to talk about next season right now without, you know, discussing the elephant in the room, and that is sort of what is the future of the Canadian Football League and this potential partnership or formal discussions, which could end up leading to maybe even a merger with the XFL and an entirely new era of professional football north of the border, but that will include American teams as well.